Hello, hello, and welcome to the very first episode of the Casual Metal Podcast. My name is Daniel Terry,
And I'm Bryan Patton.
and we are here to talk about an album that is, I think, pretty much universally loved by a lot of metalheads. It's like Metal 101, right? You've
Yeah.
got Metallica's Kill 'Em All. You can see it in the top right-hand corner of the screen, unless you're listening on Spotify, and then you're just going to have to
Trust us.
imagine the cover of Kill 'Em All, right? But if you've never seen the cover of Kill 'Em All, I'm going to describe it to you for some reason. It's literally just a hammer sitting in a pool of blood. Presumably the blood was caused by the hammer, but we're not 100% sure because the hammer actually looks really clean.
Mhm.
Bryan, you and I have both been on kind of this weird Metallica kick lately, which is weird, right? Because like I don't spend all that much time listening to Metallica. Like I've always loved them, but like as you get into metal, you start getting like into all of the nitty gritty subgenres and all of the different bands. Even if I was only a thrash metal fan, there's so many bands to check out that it
Yeah.
might take a while to get back to Metallica. So now I'm almost 40, so I guess it's time for me to get back to Metallica. But something that you told me in the DFT'S Dungeon Discord server recently was that Kill 'Em All is your favorite Metallica
Mm.
album,
Yeah.
which is not something that I hear that often. It's not a common opinion that is shared. I'm sure there's other people out there, but and I want to get into that, but I want to start off at the very beginning for both of us. So I'm gonna kick it over to you first, Bryan. What was your first exposure to Metallica, and what was your first exposure to Kill 'Em All?
My first exposure to Metallica was VH1 Behind the Music Metallica.
Okay, let's get the whole
It,
story.
it was not an album. It was not any music video and it was the behind the music, which maybe says a lot about being in the podcast world and telling band stories is like how much I loved behind the music back in the day. But yeah, it was watching behind the music and it was wild and crazy. And I think somewhere along that time that I saw that was roughly around the time that S&M came out.
Okay,
And
the first S&M, yeah.
the first S&M, which I think what I would say, like, Kill 'Em All is my favorite Metallica record, I would put an asterisk because S&M is probably my favorite Metallica
Okay,
record, but
interesting.
that's like saying a band's greatest hits is your favorite record, and, like, that
Well,
doesn't
but
go.
it had a pretty unique angle.
It did have a unique angle, which is why I think it stuck with me because I think a lot of those songs, the old songs sound better with James's more matured voice and the symphony behind it. Like it's great.
Interesting.
My exposure to Kill 'Em All, at some point, you just listen to music and get into metal and you buy these albums because they're iconic. So at some point, as I'm buying records that use CD shops, probably record and tape traders, I'd just come across and buy the Metallica discography and listen to Kill 'Em All.
Right, okay.
What about you, Dan?
So I had a friend that lived down the street from me named Josh. For any real OGs that are listening, Josh was on like the first, I think, 4 or 5 episodes of Discography Discussion. And our first episode was about Metallica on that show as well. But Josh was like really into Metallica. Him and my other co-host Joe were the only guys that I knew when I was in grade school that played guitar. That was kind of like they were into bands that I wasn't allowed to listen to because I was a Christian boy. I went to a very strict evangelical church. And so like you're not going to be listening to much Metallica, especially not a record like Kill 'Em All. you know, but Josh and Joe, they were both really, really into Metallica. And eventually it just ended up rubbing off on me. I would go over to Josh's house and we would play like Duke Nukem 3D on his computer and we would listen to Metallica. It was like just a classic 90s scene, right? And eventually he ended up making me copies of the first 4 Metallica albums. And so that was really my first exposure to Kill 'Em All. It was a burned copy. Sorry, Lars. But yeah, it's one of those things that it always sticks with me because I remember I used to play like Doom on the computer and listen to Kill 'Em All. I always thought this one was unique because it doesn't sound like if we're talking just the first 4 Metallica albums, Kill 'Em All through Justice, this one is the most different sounding. It stands out the most
Yeah.
because like I think for a lot of people their introduction to Metallica was probably somewhere between Master of Puppets and the Black Album, for the mass populace. And Kill 'Em All is definitely more rooted in like sort of this like punky, like really old school thrash metal sort of way. It's like a heavy metal riffs with like a punk attitude, you
Yeah.
know. And James's vocals sound a lot different than they did. I mean, he sounds like a little, like almost like a little kid
Yeah.
version of himself, because that's essentially, what he was. I think they were real Metallica fans are going to be like, oh my god, you guys don't know this. But yeah, I would assume that they had to have been like teenagers, right? When they recorded this, like 18, 19 years old. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah. James would have been 20.
20 years old. Okay. So like when the songs were being written, that,
Yeah.
probably 18, 19, I would
Yeah.
assume. But yeah, he delivers in this sort of like yells a lot, but then also like there is sort of an attempt to make the yelling vocals like musical. He's like
Mhm.
he's like sort of trying to sing but trying to yell at the same time. And it's just not the James Hetfield that I think a lot of people are familiar with. And that's why like Kill 'Em All definitely isn't like my favorite album by Metallica, but in sort of revisiting it for this podcast episode, I found that I enjoyed a lot more than I thought that I would. And I'm curious to get your opinion on why this one really stands out to you above the rest, because you've always shown a little bit more of a interest in this one.
Yeah. I mean, I think Metallica has written great songs and great albums, but like there's always a moment on Master Puppets, Ride the Lightning, Justice, whatever, where I'm like, I check out, right? There's a song or two where I'm just like not that interested in it. Things take a dip or there's
Usually the
some weird.
instrumental song, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah, like and Kill 'Em All is like it is as thrash as the band is start to finish. They're young, they're full of gusto. I think it is the first moment we like right from the jump. Like what makes Metallica the biggest metal band in the entire world? It's not that they're the heaviest band, it's not that they're the fastest band, probably not even the most technical band, but it is their ability to write catchy riffs and catchy hooks, and you get that right out at the gate with this record. I mean, if you hit play, hit the light smacks you right in the face. Like that song, that hook is getting stuck in your head. And I
sure.
think, I think from, I mean, Pulling Teeth is on this record is a little like whatever. Like it has a bit of a lull in there. But I just find the songs to be the most compelling start to finish on this album compared to the rest of their discography, where there are moments that leave me feeling like whatever.
Sure. Well, and I think it's cool on Kill 'Em All too that they had that kind of commercial appeal
Yeah.
right from the get go. Because
Yeah.
like I think of like other thrash bands that I like. Like I'm a big huge Creator fan. But then I think back to like if I'm listening to like Endless Pain by Creator, that like that it's a really great thrash record, but like it doesn't get stuck in your head like a Four Horsemen or Motor Breath or
Yeah.
and I don't think it was it obviously wasn't Creator's intent to do that,
Yeah.
and that's fine. But it's just the first example that sort of came into my mind. Like even bands like Slayer, a lot of the bands that were focused just on the thrash intensity. I love all those bands, but there's something really special about Kill 'Em All in 1983 that like is able to be fast, able to be
Mhm.
extreme, for the time, but also has a catchiness to it
Yeah.
that the band would eventually end up perfecting, on later albums. I disagree with you though on saying that Anesthesia is like kind of a lull. It's honestly one of
Well,
my favorite parts of the record just because of how different it is from everything else.
fair enough.
Yeah. I mean, it's an incredible bass solo. Um,
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
Cliff Burt. Well, and that's something too, is that this record is like, I think I told you this on text earlier, that this record is like Cliff Burton, the album. There's so much like bass driven stuff going on Kill 'Em All in a genre that really like the bass player isn't usually that much of a focus. But you know, Cliff gets his own solo track, you know what I mean, on the
yeah,
record, which is like kind of not really done that much in metal. Well, there's other bands that have probably done it, but like this is one of the first examples I remember. I didn't even know that like the bass could sound like that. Because
mhm,
keep in mind, I'm like was barely a teenager whenever I first heard this album, and so I'm like, wow, that was all done with the bass guitar. Like, I can't believe that. So I really like that song. Some of my favorites on Kill 'Em All though would probably be like The Four Horsemen is an absolutely iconic song. I really like Jump in the Fire. they would have these songs where like the whole point was just to be like to like piss off your parents. You know, and then a song like Jump in the Fire is like perfect for that. Phantom Lords like that. Seek and Destroy.
Mm.
Seek and Destroy is one of my absolute favorite. Just like that. Even though, like, again, this isn't like my go-to album for Metallica, like I still remember all of these riffs.
Yeah.
You know, they're still sort of cemented into my brain, whether I want to acknowledge it or not.
Yeah. I come back to Whiplash so often as just like this song, James is like the down picking master, just that like crushing on that song. I mean the pitfall of this record is James's vocals, in my opinion, and how just like I mean they're young, they're immature, and there's nothing wrong with that. And like
Yeah.
it would be interesting to hear what his voice might sound like now had drugs and alcohol not been such a heavy part of like his
You
life.
know,
And
here's the thing
like
though, like, I mean, for him having all of those issues, he still sounds great. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Even as like a
yeah,
70-year-old, you know?
yeah,
But I'm with you. Like I definitely enjoyed like the more like mature James Hetfield voice. And this record, yeah, it's not really quite there yet. He hasn't figured out 100%. I think Lars sounds good on this record.
yeah,
It's not something anybody ever talks about when they talk about Metallica, but like I wouldn't necessarily call myself a Lars apologist, but I don't think that I think that Lars gets unnecessarily kind of discounted in the band. You know, like it's one of those things where like everything that's ever happened bad with Metallica like always gets blamed on Lars.
yeah,
Which but I think he sounds good on Kill 'Em All and even on Lightning
yeah,
and Puppets Justice. It gets a little rough. That's where you start kind of seeing the cracks, but it's fine. Like, you know what I mean? Like I don't really have any issues. I'm also not a drummer myself, so like it's hard for me necessarily to like distinguish like bad drumming from good drumming, but
yeah,
like, you know, I can definitely like get moving, you know, when I'm listening to Whiplash or Motor Breath, you know. But yeah, I think Hit the Lights was always the beginning of Hit the Lights always kind of made me feel like, oh, I'm not going to like this record. There's something about like metal albums from the 80s whenever they just like fade in that way and you hear all this like sort of guitar wank, you know, going on in
yeah,
the background. And you're like, oh God, what is this going to be? It's going to be some sort of self-indulgent thing. And then he kicks in with the like no life till leather. We're going to kick some ass tonight, you know, and you're
yeah,
like, oh, I don't, are we doing this? Is this leather jackets and, and I say this a lot. Like I feel like Hit the Lights sort of while being a good song, like once it kicks in, I start getting more comfortable with it. But it's just the fade in and the introductory lyrics like sort of sets you up for an experience that you thankfully do not get,
yeah,
throughout the rest of it because you go into Four Horsemen and then the lyrics are evil and and
yeah.
fun. I think with Kill 'Em All too, I think that like coming to it whenever I did was definitely like I would say probably late 90s or maybe even 2000. And so I definitely heard much harder music at the time, like more down-tuned stuff.
Mhm.
And not that I was like listening to it, but like I was aware that it existed, right? And so an album like Kill 'Em All, I had the same complaint with Iron Maiden, where like the cover artwork and everything makes you think that like this is going to be the heaviest, scariest album ever. And I remember being like really surprised that like, oh, it actually sounds like kind of thin, and it's they're in standard tuning, and you know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah. But I
it,
think the thing you have to go back to with this is like it's 1983.
right,
Like you have Iron Maiden and Sabbath, but like what else you got? Like
yeah,
they're not getting if whatever's happened in Germany or Norway or Finland at the time, like they're not getting that.
right,
Like
yeah.
like
No, it's true, and I like to be clear, I'm not like criticizing it for not being like modern heavy.
yeah,
But at the time, I had no conception of that. I didn't really, I'm over at my friend's house and he's like, "You get this record, you should listen to it." Like, and so I have no idea what to expect. But he shows me this album cover with a, blood-soaked hammer on it, and
yeah.
I'm like, okay, whoa, what? Like, I'm gonna get in huge trouble if my mom finds out that I, was over here listening to this, right?
Yeah.
But it's funny, like as I get older, I'm continually surprised by how extreme it is
Mhm.
for 1983. Just the speed, the speed of the rhythm section alone is enough to kind of carry me through. So your first copy of Kill 'Em All, Did yours have the bonus tracks on it?
No,
Okay.
they did not.
So there's a copy that I don't have it in front of me on my desk, but my original copy of Kill 'Em All that's like all completely worn out. Like I might take it to one of those shops and have them try to resurface it because it has two bonus tracks on it. It's got Am I Evil,
Mhm.
which is the Diamond Head cover,
Yeah.
and then it's got Blitzkrieg on it as well. And I didn't even know that that was like rare. Like that, apparently that's like a harder to find copy of Kill 'Em All. And just for reference, to me, a rare CD is anything that costs over $20. You know, um, because that honestly, that's kind of what has kicked off this whole sort of wanting to do a weekly podcast. Is I've been really into CD collecting again,
Yeah.
and so finding all my Metallica stuff, and then realizing I didn't have a lot of the newer Metallica albums because I was one of those guys who's like, well, I don't really want to listen to anything after Saint Anger. You know what I mean? Like, but yeah, in revisiting Kill 'Em All, I'm definitely surprised by how tight the band sounds. I'm surprised by how extreme it is for 1983. And I'm also really impressed that even now, I was watching some live videos of Metallica earlier this week, and they can still play Seek and Destroy like it's
Yeah.
nothing. And it sounds authentic, to the original recording. You've got a different bass player, and that's it. And it's still the same band. The only elephant in the room that we didn't really talk about yet, and that's the fact that Dave Mustaine wrote, probably I think it was 4 songs on this record.
Yeah.
And that's actually why I have the CD out because I've got the liner notes here.
Yeah. Four Horsemen, Jump in the Fire,
Oh, you know
Phantom
them by
Lord,
heart.
and Metal Militia.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll just put this away. Should put a shotgun blast right there, right? But yeah, so that was always kind of one of the most interesting things. So in your VH1 Behind the Music, did they talk about that? Dave, did they interview Dave Mustaine
Oh
and
yeah.
talk about what happened with him? Because basically, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here. I guess the band felt that, and keep in mind that this is Metallica, felt that Dave partied too hard and
Yeah.
got and drank too much, and I don't think it was that he partied hard and drank too much as I think they said he got like really confrontational and violent whenever he was
Mhm.
drunk, and the rest of them got like happy and fun when they were drunk. And so like you definitely know you have an alcohol problem when Metallica tells you to calm it
Yeah.
down. When James Hetfield's like, "Hey man, you really need to slow it down here."
Yeah.
That's that should be a pretty big wake up moment. And from my understanding, they basically just like after a hard night of drinking, like he they just woke him up and put him on a bus and
Yeah.
told him he was out of the band.
Yeah. They were
And
in New York and fired him, sent him
yeah,
on his way.
yeah, I mean, absolutely wild how all that went down. And it's interesting too because like I feel like I mean that was sort of Dave's chip on his shoulder for I mean
Yeah.
so much of his career, even though
Still
obviously
to this day.
yeah, I mean, obviously, like Megadeth went on to do, amazing things as well.
Yeah.
But I mean, the only thing that people really have against Megadeth is they're not Metallica. That's kind of the unfair comparison, right? Because what band is Metallica?
Right.
In the sense of like, I can still buy new Metallica albums for $5. I can go to the Walmart that's like 3 minutes down the road for me and buy Ride the Lightning for $5 in a digipack remastered. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, or buy it on vinyl for like $15. We're living in
Yeah.
a really weird time right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, back to Kill 'Em All. I think it's interesting too. I do think that the Dave Mustaine influence on the songwriting though is very apparent in why I think this album sounds so different than their later albums. Even though, I mean, obviously some of those songs carried over. I know there's songs in like Ride the Lightning that Dave Mustaine wrote as well. But I mean, as time went on, they kind of started sifting all of that stuff out. But yeah,
Kirk Hammett steps in and just crushes. I mean, the solos on this record are phenomenal. Um,
yeah.
I mean, Kirk's always been a killer guitar player and like shines on this album, shines on every album. Well, he doesn't shine on Saint Anger, but who does?
I don't think that was his,
Uh,
I don't think that was his fault.
I don't think that was his fault. That was the mandate from
Bob
have
Rock,
no
yeah.
solos.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, Kirk sounds great. I'm glad you brought Kirk up. I was like, we didn't bring him up at all, and that
Yeah.
seems like not fair. But yeah, no, Kirk sounds great on this record because I think he not playing in Exodus at the time.
Yeah, he's a founding member.
Yeah, so poser
Yep.
alert if I didn't, if I had to ask somebody that. But I'm kind of rusty on this stuff. I used to have like encyclopedic knowledge of a lot of this stuff, and now I'm just old. And as you can tell from all my gray hair, like all of that knowledge has sort of just pushed itself out of my face at this point. Um, but yeah, like I really like Kirk Hammett's stuff more on Ride the Lightning. I think Ride the Lightning is probably my favorite Metallica album.
Yeah.
But, and we're not really necessarily talking about that record this week, but I think it's fun to listen to the transition, kind of how they transition from this album to Master of Puppets on Ride the
Yeah.
Lightning. How you still have a little bit of like James's like shouting vocals, with him also trying to sing, because I feel like Fight Fire with Fire is like not that much of a far cry from something that could have been on
Yeah.
Kill 'Em All. But yeah, I mean, this record is definitely actually something that I have found myself, not just because we're doing this podcast, but I have found myself listening to more and more because I don't necessarily. I think once I had heard records that I felt were better, like Master of Puppets, I kind of didn't revisit that, and I didn't really revisit this one, and that's kind of a shame.
I mean, I did a run through their discography earlier this year, and it's encouraged me to go back to Metallica in general. But I mean, I think I just continue to go back to Kill 'Em All because it is the record that resonates with me the most. That and this weird obsession I have with listening to Saint Anger to try to make it make sense.
Dude, I listened to Saint Anger. I listened to Saint Anger not that long ago. I think it was last Wednesday because my daughter she decided she wanted to go to youth group at our church randomly, and she'd never been before. And I was like, "Sure, I'll take you." So I took her and dropped her off, and I didn't really have anywhere to go. So I had just put all of the Metallica CDs in my CD case, and I was like, you know what? Let's pop Saint Anger in, and I listened to I saw in the Discord I started like giving my opinion on like each track as I was going through, and I don't know, kind of an interesting record because I never really related to James's lyrics that much, but like now that I'm like older, I did relate a little bit to some of the stuff on Saint Anger,
Yeah.
because it's a record that's basically about being like confused and old and upset, not really knowing why you're confused and upset, and that's very relatable to
Yeah.
somebody of my age. So I liked that. And Kill 'Em All, it's interesting. This is the last time I'll be like, it's interesting that Metallica, being as old as they are, they're one of the few bands where you can sort of chronicle almost their entire lives.
Yeah.
Because when did 72 Seasons come out? Did it come out in 2023 or was it 2022?
24.
Was it 24?
Yeah, it's last year.
Oh, wow. Okay. I am really caught up then. That's awesome. But yeah, with them being in their 70s, you see the pictures of them being like super, super old, and whenever you open up the liner notes for that, and then you look at Kill 'Em All and they're like little kids.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's interesting that you can sort of watch somebody's entire life trajectory via their records.
They're still touring, they're still going out there, and like for all the trash Lars gets, I would just say like dude is going out in his 60s playing songs that he wrote in his 20s. Like you don't have the same stamina, you don't have the same like it when you're older. Like I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, he's gonna make mistakes, but like dude is playing 100, 200 shows a year, like in
Well,
his
yeah,
60s. Like
people
and
criticize him for having simplistic drum parts, but like that's probably the biggest favor that 20-year-old Lars ever did for 60-year-old Lars. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
he's like, "Oh, cool, I can still play this stuff,"
Yeah.
all this time. No, I've kind of come to like Lars a lot more over the years because like there was this weird time in the 90s and early 2000s. I think a lot of it was just because of the Napster stuff is honestly when everybody decided they didn't like Lars.
Yeah.
Um because it is unusual, I think, sometimes for the drummer to be sort of the public spokesman for the band. For all the trash that he got about how digital music was going to destroy the industry and yada yada yada, he was like totally right about all of that. In retrospect,
He was right.
you know. I mean, it was
largely
a little bit
true.
like, "Oh, they're millionaires, they're gonna be fine," or whatever, but, like, I mean, however it affected the members of Metallica personally, he was still right about, like, if people can get it for free, they're gonna get it for free. There is
Yeah,
no, there we have to find some way to regulate and control this, or else it's just gonna be total chaos. And now the music industry has found a way to screw over not only the music listeners, but the artists as well, all in one swoop, so, they really figured it out there.
they sure did.
Yeah. But I think that's all the time we have for this week. Sorry guys if this first episode was kind of rough. It's been a while since I've done this sort of thing, but just stick with us. It's going to get better. And I haven't decided if we should like stick with the theme of like debut albums that we
Mm,
like or like do we not even put any rules on it because it is casual. So
yeah.
we'll talk about that we'll talk about that off the mic and figure it out, but we will be here again for the next one with a different album. So thank you guys so much for watching or listening, and we will see you guys next time.